Board of Trustees regular meeting will come to order. Today is Tuesday, August 17th. Time is 7:05. Is Trustee Quinn here today?
I did not see him in Zoom.
Then we are all present except for Trustee Quinn. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to this agenda as presented? I'd like to present one as item number 3. I have a comment here from our Public Works, and I would like to put them in immediately following with this consent agenda, so that's actually item 4. Is there a second to that?
You make it like 3A instead.
You can make it 3A. It would actually be 3C because it's consent agenda.
Oh, we see.
But nevertheless, we will have it following the
Hold
consent
on.
agenda. All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion passes, and I will have you speak immediately following consent agenda. Item 3 is the consent agenda, which is the accounts payable from July 30th to August 16th, as well as the Board of Trustees meeting minutes from August 3rd. Does anyone on the board have something to bring up with either of those items?
I did email Matt some revisions and edits. Yeah, that's just to make them more consistent.
Right?
Are those included in this typing of the minutes now? Or
No, so I was hoping, sorry, I was getting myself set up again. Sunday, if you could explain what those were in the public meeting, and then I can throw them on after the fact.
Right, well, a lot of capitalizations of proper names and titles. Misspellings that were corrected. Sally Bush, SALLIE. Instead of SALLY. And I think that was pretty much it, just Matt was not offended by it, thank goodness. Especially when I play ground with police. The one thing that I did want to inquire about was the discussion on the fitness court. I went away from the meeting, the last meeting, understanding that the family fund, the Pprta family fund would be financing it, and that the historical group would be managing it. And if that is incorrect, I would like to know.
Right? There's always questions with that. I think that's a fair question.
I think my impression was the town was to manage it, is what my impression was, especially regarding upkeep, maintenance, all of that. My impression was that it's the town's responsibility for all of that.
Under the supervision of the historical.
I don't believe so.
Where would they fit in?
I thought it was just for the funding. And also for the artwork, after the initial 5-year license for the first artwork expires, that they would do different artwork, but we indicated that the town would still have final say.
So
That was my
possibly if Jesse Stroop is going to be speaking this evening, he could give us a little more explanation on that.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's on the agenda, so let's get clarification on
Thank you
that.
very much.
Yes, thank you. So I would move to approve this consent agenda as amended.
Second.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 And that motion passes. Kyle, you have the floor. If you'd like to take to the podium, please.
Receive.
Or
Whatever, yeah.
I just want to bring something to light. There's someone that's using previous campaign slogan to try and use against Public Works. That we made some claim that smoother roads ahead, and it's being used out of context. It's present here this evening. I specifically heard to say something about it this evening. It's nothing we've said, Public Works, about smoother roads ahead. I don't know if it's important, but I'm just tired of hearing it used against us. Out of context.
I do want to say that I appreciate all the hard work that Public Works is putting in for the record. I know it's a lot of hours and it's a lot of work, and quite often without a lot of thanks or acknowledgement. But let me thank you for, let me thank you. It's important that you do your job and you do a good job. Thank you. Item 4, this is a presentation by Rajan Pirinya. Is that right?
Right.
This is a Gmf Fireworks Collage, and sir, if you would like to come up here and speak, I would appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I'll be just a few minutes. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to work for a few minutes. Last year, I believe you had this glorious fireworks by the lake. I took some pictures of it and put together this collage for you. It's a humble donation to the city of Green Mountain Falls. Merry Christmas. Hopefully you like it. It's this. Look at it more later.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is I'll just, let's say a few things, a couple of things for a few minutes. This is my way of showing my love for this community. You know, I fell in love with Colorado decades ago when I moved here from Dallas when I was a kid. And ever since I've been photographing the beauty and wonder and drama of Colorado, especially the Pikes Peak region and the Blue Pass area. Hopefully I've been doing something right because I've been represented in a lot of galleries around the country. I've been published nationally and internationally. If you get tired of it, you want to throw darts at it, that's fine. But if you like it, if you want to frame it and display it somewhere, I'd be glad to take care of the framing for you. Of course, I don't do my own framing. I don't know how. I've never framed anything, but there are frame shops in town that give me a fairly generous 30–35% discount. A couple of years ago, I donated something similar to the food pantry in Woodland Park, and they let me do the framing. I saved them about $80. I can drop it off and pick it up and bring it to you with the receipt and you reimburse me, or I can drop it off and you pick it up with your tax exempt paperwork. That will save you some more money. Also, I put the same images on this CD. You're welcome to use them for any purpose.
Wonderful.
Brochure, screensaver, whatever you want, it's all yours. Since there was extra room, it holds up to 42 images. Since there was some extra space, I included some shots of the 3 creeks that run through town, Catamount, Crystal, and Fountain, and they end up in the Gulf of Mexico and New Orleans or Louisiana. And according to the map, I saw the area up to what do you call it? Garden of Eden within Green Mountain Falls. So you will see some shots of Catamount Falls, Crystal Creek, and Fountain Creek. You're welcome to use those for anything you like. And just a friendly reminder, as you know, the CD is basically a piece of plastic. It's very sensitive to fingerprints, smudges, heat and humidity, and magnet, especially magnet. It'll delete it. If my contact information is here, if you have any questions, it's also on this CD. So let's see if I covered everything.
Excuse me, sir, could I ask you one favor?
Sure.
Would you turn the photograph around so that people that are joining online can see it? Oh, wow. Thank you, sir.
Certainly. And just one last thing, I can see you have blank spaces on the wall. If you can afford the framing, I'd be glad to bring you more. I wish I could take care of the framing myself, but I'm a poor old geezer. So you would have to pick up the tab for that. I can, if you have room for more pictures, I'll be glad to bring you more. And there they are. Thanks a
Well,
lot.
thank you. Well, we very much appreciate that. You know, those fireworks were literally a bright spot during a dark time. COVID was hard on us, and I think this was a really nice, good reminder, you know, a good thing. So I would direct staff, Angie, if you would please work, and we will figure out with the framing.
Absolutely. And thank you to Greenbox
For bringing on those
Bringing
fireworks.
fireworks.
That's true too. So thank you so very much.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.
That nice. The next item on the agenda is PRT Fitness Court recommendation. This is a continuance from our August 3rd meeting. Board, you are in possession of several letters discussing this. And Mr. Stroop is here right now. Jesse, I think to start out with, we do want some clarification of the things that Sunday was questioning.
Sure. So the grant would be made, the grant for the fitness court, $200,000 would be made directly to the town of Greenmount Falls. So the fitness court would become the property of the town. Historic Greenmount Falls would only manage the updating of the artwork as those art contracts expire, and would agree to have the Board of Trustees give final approval on artwork selected. So sort of, are there any other questions before I talk about new information?
Or,
No, go ahead and wait till you.
all right, so if you'll go ahead and present, and then we will go from there.
Okay, so I did receive, I talked to the folks at Fitness Court, and they put together a maintenance checklist for the project, which would be done annually. And they have advised that the cost of that inspection, if done by town staff, would have a $750 value. So that's $10,000. They also suggested that we have on hand $5,000 every 5 years to replace equipment as necessary. I was told that this was extremely rare, that there would be this many repairs, but that was, we were looking at worst case scenario. So the Kirkpatrick Fund would cover up to $40,000 in repairs over the course of 20 years. And that would be, could be spelled out in the memorandum of understanding. They also provided me all of the warranty information for the fitness court and its parts. And they will be sending a maintenance kit. So my thought here was that as a current member of the PRT and whatever I'm doing in the future, I'm happy to help do these inspections and keep the court in good shape. And I think that at least with current members of the PRT, they'd be willing to assist. Or do you have any other questions I can answer?
So what's the funding cycle again?
So the Kirkpatrick Family Fund would basically approve the grant next week based on approvals here tonight. The town would then do a purchase order with Fitness Court, and they would set up delivery, and then we would pay the grant into the town. The grant, when I say the grant, that's the $200,000 for the court. There's an additional $20,000 for the concrete pad and the installation of that, which Mike Pinman and Pinman Construction have agreed to donate. And then there's the $40,000 that the Kirkpatrick Family Fund would hold or guarantee as money for repairs over the next 20 years.
Thank you. So board, I know that you've seen in the correspondence, there is a lot of people with grave reservations about this project. We have heard some in support. We have an opportunity to discuss. We also have an opportunity, even though it wouldn't, the timing isn't good for the grant cycle. There's also an opportunity if we would want to have more of a public hearing. While it's not necessary by law, when you consider this is a 20-year change to the town, that is also something that you should consider.
And I agree with having some sort of a public hearing, having some sort of a forum to really get the word out there better and get more input from the community, because this is such a big, big thing. It's such a big commitment. So, Rose, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I wish, that we had some more lead time. I realize that it's, the grant cycle is coming up, but I don't know how many people are aware of the project, and it is like you say, a huge commitment, and it's also I would like to get more feedback once people are aware of it. I think that that the video was really helpful, informative, and my personal feelings are, I really hate going to gyms, but I love the equipment. So, but I'm not here to represent myself. So I would like to hear more from the community, because at this point, most of what I've heard has been a no.
Same here.
Same.
But I don't know that that's a really good sample of the community. It's just,
Is there literature or something, Jesse, that we can distribute in some way?
Well, it has been out on all our agendas and agenda packets.
Right. I'm thinking not everyone pays attention to those.
Agreed. But I think in fairness, for a 20-year commitment, we should probably put out there that we're having a meeting specifically to discuss. It would be a change to our parks for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have that much flat green space, and
Or flat space.
flat space at all. And I've seen that area used just to play catch, because it's one of the few places you can do that without worrying about it going in the water or something like that. Right. And I'd like to hear what the youth have to say about this, what their interest is in something like this? Because I don't think it's just, to me, it's just not, it's not just about the aesthetic of the park, but also,
All use
yes, absolutely.
potential.
And the, Jesse, I know that the, Sally Bush septic is in that park. Is this going to be far and away from septic and from the leach field and?
I thought it was on this side of the tennis court.
Yes, that's right. It's between the tennis court and the basketball court, or the proposed location is.
Like between the tennis court and the pool.
I just wanted to allay any fears about that. I know that had been a concern as well, and at least that's one question we can answer. I look at you here, even though I think you're.
Has there been any discussion about other placement options?
We did look at renderings of it placed in different areas within Pool Park, which didn't seem as appropriate. And your point took away from the green space. With knowledge now about the septic field for Sally Bush, we luckily placed it probably in the only area that would actually fit. So that was a happy accident.
Well, and I'm thinking too, as far as the pool things, do we know which side the well is on?
Do you know, is the
Do we
well
know
up
which
there by
side
the,
the septic is on for the pool?
I know where the septic is.
And is that in the parking lot area or is that on the?
It's
on the
behind.
park? Okay.
And the
Okay.
well's behind.
And the well is by the pump room and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because we don't want to.
Yeah, don't want to interfere with that either.
Is there any possibility of putting it on private property? Like I'm thinking Joyland area is another flat area.
Flattish area.
Flat-ish, yeah, and I don't know if that's been considered, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I think for it to be a gift to the town, it would need to be on town property. Otherwise, it would be a private purchase.
Right.
Right. True.
At the last meeting, the board had requested that staff reach out to GoPro regarding grant opportunities and matching funds. I did do that. I just spoke with Charlie Anderson and GoPro, which is our GoPro regional manager. And GoPro has a new strategic plan, which has a very community-led focus, a community outreach focus to access funding. And she's offered to present at the PRT meeting. So it's much less now about matching funds and so much more now about the outreach piece. So she's going to present that new information to the PRT and see what talk to them about what opportunities they might be interested in pursuing.
Good. Good, well. So I feel that way too. No, no, she's fine. I just really do feel sometimes like I'm just scratching at the door when I'm.
I'm not clear how what Angie just said about GoPro, how that relates to this project.
Well, we had spoken at the last meeting that could we use this grant as
Oh, as
some
leverage
matching
for-
funds for the ADA accessibility that we all want to do.
Okay, so
for
it's not,
Pool Park.
so it's not really
That's not
part
really,
of that picture.
not really part of the thing.
They did mention that, the willingness to donate and invest in the community from generous benefactors such as this is a big positive in seeking grant funding. So, but she's going to come into a presentation for PRT and she'll do one for you guys too if you're interested.
Always interesting. But I think what we're hearing here is that we're uncomfortable making a 20-year commitment without a bit more public, at least opportunity. And at least public hearing, we quite often roundtable it. which I think has been valuable, especially if we had maybe some representation from GoCo, who could also bring up what the pluses would be of having this. Because what we're hearing is a lot of things on the negative, but the presentation is great. But I also heard from several people that said they would really like to see it be in a public hearing type setting. So we can label it as workshop since it's not truly a hearing. If that's the will of the board.
Is the video available? Is it on the website?
It's no, I've not posted on the website or the YouTube. I guess the link should be accessible, but it wouldn't be easily navigated to, I would
It's in
argue.
the ones we have,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we could certainly feature on the front, on the, you know, on the page.
I think that would be really helpful.
And so is the will of the board to just post this for another time or set a workshop prior to the next meeting to discuss? So I'm looking for a motion. I'm distracted and looking at this. Because I know we're pushing outside of the grant cycle for Kirkpatrick Family Fund.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope that doing that doesn't kind of nullify things at this point, so.
Well, which is a true possibility, but otherwise our only the feedback I've gotten the most of is just say no.
Yeah, but yeah.
And truthfully, if we had to vote today, if we were forced to vote today, my vote would be no. Because of the feedback that I've
Because of
gotten.
everything we've gotten.
So I really want to be fair to everyone involved.
Jesse, so by having a workshop, how does that affect things going forward?
I could conceivably ask Kirkpatrick Family Fund to do a conditional approval based on the findings of the public hearing, but I think they would want to see the minutes from tonight's meeting and from the last meeting, which haven't been posted yet. And I think they would want to hear specifics on why the board is hesitant to approve something that's been presented 4 times. I just think they would want to have a clear understanding of what the potential is before they choose not to give that funding to someone else that's applied.
So
That's
can
true.
we clarify? You said 4 times. Yesterday was, or not yesterday, last meeting was the first I was aware of it. This is the second for me. So when else has it been presented?
It was presented during 2 PRT meetings prior to being at the Board of Trustees.
And I, I recognize that it was recommended by the PRT and,
True.
Mhm.
And I don't know, can we share the correspondence we've received?
Sure, I think we have 2 of the 3 in the current packet.
And there's been,
I had a third one and I think
So
it just
Jesse,
didn't
what
make
was the
sense.
PRT? What were their thoughts on getting input from the public? And trying to get more input from the public? Did they have any type of a plan?
So I'm stretching my brain back to I can't remember if it was the end of June or the beginning of July that we first presented this. And I think we only had maybe 2 participants who were not board members at that meeting. And they and all of the PRT members were supportive of the project. we realized that we needed to show more information. So we had the video and other things to provide at that second PRT meeting, which is where the final recommendation was made. I recused myself from the proceedings on both of those occasions, since I was the one presenting the information. Then the recommendation went to the Board of Trustees for the last meeting, and then again tonight.
Yeah, and I was, I attended those meetings, and honestly, it didn't come up that, it didn't occur to me that people wouldn't want this. So, and I don't know that it was really discussed. I don't recall, public input being discussed at the PRT meeting. It was more, like, what's the town's commitment? What are the costs? All those practical considerations. So I know I was surprised when we started getting the correspondence that was, really negative about this.
Because
So-
but from financial end, yeah, we can manage this.
Right.
Let's say in the big picture, we can manage their, Kirkpatrick's very generous, HGMFS very generous with helping us. But every call I've gotten and every letter I've gotten has said, I don't think most people feel I don't feel that most people are aware of this. It's not appropriate to push a 20-year commitment without more community input. And that's what I've gotten over and over. And I get that because I have no problem approving an art project that's here for 3 or 4 months. But a 20-year commitment, yeah.
Yeah,
I understand what they're saying.
And the art changes, and I don't know how many people were aware of that either. Some people took offense to what they were calling graffiti art by Keith Haring, but I also know that no matter what changes we make, there's going to be folks that aren't going to like.
There's always going to be yeses and nos. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and I just think I would feel a lot more comfortable at this if we got more input.
Well, at least give the opportunity.
Yes.
And if people come and share their opinion, that's giving them the opportunity. And if they don't, it chose a different opportunity. So that doesn't help you, Jesse, at all with the grant cycle. But I think the board wants to be very deliberate and make sure that we are putting this out there. I mean, we did many months on other projects, so.
And I think more information would really be helpful because I think some of the responses we're getting are based on partial information and or hearsay.
Well, and at least if they're here, we can put all the information in one basket. People can hear it, like it or not like it, but at least.
So did we have PRT minutes that indicated this? Because I mean, truthfully, the last meeting was the first that I was aware of this.
That would have been the
So-
memo instead of the minutes in relation with municipal.
It would have been what?
The memo that was included would discuss the previous meetings, but not the minutes themselves. So there was a memo that Jesse wrote that was included in this.
But that was
discussed the
last, that was our last meeting.
proceedings. Right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, that was my first
Oh, yeah.
inclination, that was my first awareness that anything was even in the works to be proposed.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking. And if we don't know what's going on, what do you think people in town know?
Sure.
So is that a motion?
I don't know. I think we need to figure out when we could do this. I mean, do we want to have, is a week?
Is there an opportunity to have a
Yeah.
workshop on next Tuesday?
Yeah,
Is-
is that enough time to
is
be
there-
able to get information out?
Well, we'll publish it. I'd put it in the post office too, just because it's workshop. Is town hall available? I'm sorry, I'm asking for another Tuesday,
Next Tuesday.
or do we have planning?
I believe the planning commission is meeting next Tuesday. Are you guys meeting next Tuesday? What's the fourth? Nope, so there you go, it's free.
Okay,
Second, so you guys do second and fourth if you're still one right now.
Jay, I think you're here on behalf of the PRT.
Yes. I'll just jump in. I believe Matt's PRT minutes go in detail on, at the first discussion first time Jesse brought that up. It was reported in the PRT. I don't know how you look at the PRT minutes. It was discussed then. in the first meeting.
Can you come to the workshop as well? Because I think you'll bring
I'll
it,
be there, yes.
yeah, because I think you'll bring a different perspective than some of what we have. And I really want to have a well-rounded discussion on this.
So next week, Tuesday?
Next Tuesday, can we set that for 7?
The Tuesday, the 24th.
Yeah,
Can we put it on Facebook?
So have you put anything on the website and on Facebook? or-
Okay.
Right.
They go out that way too.
and literature at the post office, definitely.
so let's make sure that we give everyone the opportunity as much as we possibly can. Since some of the correspondence has been a little pointed, let's say.
Yeah, and I won't be able to make meetings on Tuesday.
It's all right, it's a workshop, and we can hold a meeting following if we have a quorum.
I just want to let you know.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So we said all these things and didn't make a motion, but I would like to make a motion that we continue this to a workshop. Probably someone's telling me something else. Continue this to a workshop next Tuesday at 7. And is there a second to that?
I will second.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's get this knocked out. Give as many people as possible. All right. Sorry, but we're gonna do the best we can, Jesse. I appreciate your patience.
No problem.
And next item on the agenda is PPRTA ballot questions for November 2022. As you know, PPRTA is our regional transit or transportation authority. You can hear both if you listen to their minutes. And as one of the 5-member regional governments, we do share in some of the PPRTA funds. This particular proposal is to discuss some of the items we would like to see be put on the ballot for our improvements and replacement funding. It's not the same as our maintenance funding. What else, Angie?
We did briefly discuss this at our amended budget discussion, which was earlier in the summer. The same list was in there. I worked through this, the wording a little bit more with the manager at PPRTA. And this is what we came up with. These questions would essentially cover everything in the capital improvements plan that's related to roads, drainage, regarding roads and bridges, and town culverts, anything we said. And then I do think it's probably a good time to just provide a little bit of update on the roads and where we're going with that right now. So, Jeff's been working with the PPRTA, BCG. There may be some federal funds that are coming available pretty soon with the transportation bill. And so we could potentially find funding there for a comprehensive stormwater drainage and roads plan. And that may be able to be, if we can get that funding, it would be done before the ballot questions come up. So we could put the results of that into the pot for requested funding and add that to these questions. And so that would be huge for us. That would essentially put our roads, we can accomplish that goal. So I'm just waiting to hear back from PPRTA if that funding opportunity is going to become available or not. But regardless, we can put everything that's in the slip right now, as well as the stormwater drainage from the plan into the to PPRT ballot. We're also in talks, meeting with El Paso County next week to prepare an equipment replacement and acquisition plan. As well as go over our public works operations in general and work on budget review prior to presenting the budget at this meeting in September. Explore some training opportunities as well.
All right. Board, do you have questions about any of this funding? The one thing I know some about is how badly we need this survey that we're talking about having the federal funding do. Part of the problems with our roads obviously is gravity and gravel and water. And we haven't had a comprehensive change in culverts for over 25 years.
Well,
We've cleaned culverts, but the culverts that were put in about 30 years ago were old hot water heaters. And that's the truth. They weren't culverts. And so we are still battling that in some places. Some places have been improved and replaced. Some places have not. But you certainly can see the result of not even knowing where some of these things are.
Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot this one very important piece. In the interim, Andre Bracken has volunteered some time and effort into putting together a temporary plan to help us just sort of maintain what we've got going now and working with public works a little bit on the regard as well, which is great because he's got 30 years experience in stormwater drainage roads. I think he's worked for the county and he did this huge I-24 project and everything. So we're really lucky to have him. All of that.
We're lucky that he doesn't get discouraged. He just keeps coming back here for more.
He's a glutton for punishment.
Certainly is. He likes us though, so we'll keep him
Just a little bit.
just a little bit. So the items that are proposed to be on the 2022 PPRTA ballot questions proposed right now are El Paso Trail and Iona Avenue roads improvement, El Paso Avenue bridge replacement, Belvedere Avenue improvements, Pass Avenue improvements, roadway drainage plan and improvements, even if we get the federal money for it, intersection improvements, roadway safety and traffic operations, and bridge improvements. Now, serving on the PPRTA, I have learned that you want to be specific in general at the same time.
And hurry up and wait.
And hurry up and wait. However, you want to be specific enough that people understand that you are working on improving items, but general enough that if a different item became either easier to fix or more imperative to fix, you actually can work within PPRTA to get that done more expeditiously. So that is the items that are on this. Or do you have any further questions about PPRTA ballot? Oh, and the reason it's on the ballot is because as part of Tabor, we always discuss how we spend our taxes. Were there any questions?
I have a question. El Paso Trail. That keeps coming up. Didn't we just work on that or did we not do that?
So
Or is this different?
the first two there, El Paso Trail and Iona Avenue roads improvements,
Yeah,
those were part of the Joel Flood
Right.
recovery projects.
right.
And with the increase in all the inflation and cost of construction that went up so quickly, we didn't have the money to fund those projects. We
Okay.
funded the two projects that were deemed health and safety critical, and then these were sort of put in a back burner, and so it's convenient.
So they're at the top of the list
Yeah.
now okay.
We talk about it a lot. We need time to get it done.
Now, I don't know at what point, if this or if the next agenda item during the PPACG meeting, there was a suggestion that Colorado Springs was going to look at wording a ballot question regarding using Tabor, like leftover Tabor funds for fire mitigation funding, to help have another source for fire mitigation funding. And I don't know where that would fit into either of these, so I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead or jumping out of it or not, but I just wanted to remember that and put that out there while we're on the subject. Because I think if we partner with them to find out what wording they're using, I think that would be helpful if we do have excess funds that need a place to go, even though I know that's usually not the case, but.
Yes, we'll take that leftover money for that. Sure,
Okay.
Sure. I could get into that question regarding that. I don't
Okay.
So does,
And actions PPACG.
Oh, yeah, there's.
Sorry,
so
I
many,
know, it's too many acronyms.
You know,
this ballot question, has the PPRTA already created this ballot question and we're just adding to it?
So how PPRTA works is, they're their own little board, and all of the 5-member governments get to add what their projects are onto the PPRTA ballot. When you get the ballot question in the mail, it's pages and pages, because
Right.
Colorado Springs and El Paso County are miles of this, because they get the lion's share, because they put the lion's share in. We get more money than we would if it was just our town funding it, being part of PPRTA, but basically that's it. This is what we add. This is our portion that we would put in the ballot. PPRTA represents us in the ballot for this.
So, so when one votes,
When
It's-
one votes,
it's a yes for everything or a no to everything?
yeah, so
On the-
basically
on the
what it
question.
is we've had PPRTA tax in place for 17 years, maybe 17, 18 years. And 2022 would be when that would sunset. They're asking for it to continue. And by asking it to continue, they also have to put what the projects would be over the next 10-year span. So looking in a 10-year cycle, this is what we would be
Okay,
looking at.
yeah, I got the impression that it was a huge ballot.
It's always huge. It is huge. It's interesting if you can read every page. And like a political election person, that person, I do, because I like to read what they're fixing in the roads.
I have a question about the second bullet point, El Paso Avenue Bridge replacement, since there are 2 bridges on that road. Which one are you looking at?
the one near Lake Park that goes across.
On the intersection of Hotel and El Paso?
Yeah. Right over Fountain Creek.
And the other one does over that too, so.
But this one is the older of the two.
So maybe we should clarify
We
that,
could put both of them.
just,
You could put El Paso Avenue.
Might not be a bad
at
idea to
Hotel,
put both of them.
or put them both.
yeah.
In the
Yeah.
next 10 to 12 years, they probably both will need replacement. anyway.
Because the other one isn't necessarily a bridge as much as it's a culvert, isn't it?
It's-
That goes over.
It's called a wash over. When that was, here's the trivia you didn't want to know. So when that was originally replaced as a culvert, it was 3 small culverts together, and they wanted to put in the big one. And it was designed actually to handle the majority of the water going through, but to safely wash over without destroying the bridge that was in place. It's a wash
And was that, has anything, that was like within the last 10 years?
That was
after that one huge
2012.
flood? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
2012.
after that one huge flood, that was when that one was, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but as techniques evolve and technology evolves, we could look at something better, newer, better, stronger, faster. So,
And the road problems will evolve, so once we make improvements, they'll change and evolve. Just like everything else, it's not that it's always gonna be fixed forever.
Too bad Kyle's not here, it's job security.
The law of unintended consequences. Anything else? I would move to approve the proposed November 2022 Pprta ballot questions as written, with the addition of El Paso Avenue bridges replacements too. And recommend the list of projects be included in the 2025 to 2034 Pprta plan. And I'll second. There's no further discussion. All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And that motion passes. November 2021 ballot questions. So next item. Angie, why don't you present this?
Sure, so we did briefly discuss these items also at our some budget update meeting. But I wanted to bring it up for continued discussion this evening, so we can flesh out any additional questions that you might have. Because when we talk about this, and not just in consideration of the budget. So the ones here listed under the November 2021 ballot question ideas. These are considerations. There's definitely budget considerations to each of these. So if the board is interested in any or all of these options or some of these options, we can have the attorney draft official questions for the board to review. Staff would evaluate the amounts needed to get public works up to par and match operating expectations with those of expectations of citizens in town. Considering current inflation, all of it would be based on community need, and we can present all that information at our next meeting. And obviously, this will be done in partnership with our town engineer.
And what's the deadline for this? I know I saw this somewhere.
So down at the bottom,
43 days before election.
yeah, there's a process overview for ballot language.
Right.
It's down at the bottom there. And so we have to have anything with Tabor consideration, which would be all of these questions, the first four bullet points, 45 days before the election.
That we would have to have it, our resolution set to be able to pass it
It
on
would
to
it would have
them.
to be filed by the town clerk of the county. So we would have to basically finalize those numbers at the next meeting. And then, and if we miss the 45-day mark for the November election, which I think we may, then we'd be looking at the April ballot. It's a bit of a marathon instead of a sprint, but I tried to sprint. If you really close. And then the attorney should be signing on here on Zoom to discuss the April 2022 ballot question considerations. And she will be able to answer any questions regarding marijuana tax, the process. This would just be an initial discussion. That's a bit of a longer process. There's a lot to consider in that. So you did receive that memo from the attorney around back on that. So if you have any questions, you can do that.
All right, so everything being proposed tonight, at least everything on this memo for November is increase in taxes and increase the cap of short-term licenses, which well, none of these are fun subjects. Increase in occupational tax, that's STRs, short-term rentals, increase in property tax, increase in sales tax. The reason that the cap on short-term licenses is on here is when we set the cap of short-term rentals at 60, we thought that was an incredibly high number and we never make it. And at this time, all the licenses are taken. Because And that's a serious consideration, because even when we set it at 60, so much of the pushback was because, as you can imagine, people don't want Greenmount Falls to not be a neighborhood anymore, instead of just lots and lots of rental properties. However, you also have people who own more than one property, or perhaps they're only here for a week or two themselves, and they want to rent it out, then make some money or make their mortgage. So that's a serious consideration about raising the cap on that.
So I have two questions off the top of your head.
Okay.
One, are you aware of the number of short-term on the waiting list?
0.
Okay,
I've
so
had a
we're
bunch of
capped at 60?
informal- Yeah, 60, we just did 60 the other day. I've had informal discussions with
Okay.
several people, but
Okay.
no formal applications have been submitted.
Okay, and then regarding the revenue, like the quarterly tax that we're supposed to get from them, do we know the number of these properties that we're receiving that from?
Off the top of my
Does,
head, no.
do we have
For that.
the availability of, like, through the, whatever, the organization that does that, or, you know,
Yes.
the-
Yeah.
do we have the capability to do a report
Yeah.
based on that?
So
Absolutely.
in other words, are they all active?
As far as I know, yes, but I'm going through a full audit of the entirety of Muni Reds right now, just to verify that. I found a few short-term rentals that showed as active but didn't have paperwork on file. And so I wasn't necessarily around when Muni Reds was implemented. I don't necessarily know if they just missed something or whatever. More so, I think the issue was we didn't have a required field for email communication. And so we send out our notifications for paperwork, workflow, remittance, and all that via email. And I just changed it with Reds now, where all initial accounts require an email to even have an
To
account.
set up?
And then it went back and for the people we do have on file, emailed them to get them to verify and update their current email address. And then as a portion of the audit that I'm doing is cold calling and trying to get access to that documentation again. There's also in the near future, a workflow that will be added that will hopefully send out. So in addition to emails and calls, they'll get a notification in their Reds account that this is a task they need to complete. And then we can get more on board with getting communications out more effectively.
And the reason I asked this is not because they're not compliant. People are something like 98% compliant, but there are a few licenses who they set up a license, but they're not renting their property. And if they would be willing to give up their license to someone else.
If we've got a waiting list, that's why I was asking about the waiting list.
Exactly. So, board, time to discuss if you are interested in any of these 2021 ballot question ideas. We have worked pretty diligently for a long time to try to come up with other revenue sources other than raising taxes. We all did see an increase in property taxes just because our homes' values have increased overall. But that is always an option, whether it is a palatable option or not is different.
Is there a percentage on the property tax?
I was just trying to think about how to ask that, like,
Yeah. So that's a really great question. That would be, you know, if you're interested in exploring these, some of these or all of these as options, then I could come up with that calculation when we put together the proposed budget for the next meeting. And we can look at what that number would need to be to bring things up to where the expectations are.
and what percentage of the property tax do we know what? I don't know what else is. So let's say on a property, it's $1,000 tax. How much of that $1,000 comes to the school compared to, or to the school, to the town compared to the other funding areas. Does that make sense?
It does. So I have an answer, but probably it may or may not.
It's
be
vague,
everyone,
yeah.
so I'll just throw it out there. We'll see where we go from there. So the property tax, we set the mills with the county sends us information. Like this year, I believe we got 151 or 140, 154,000. That's the number that's coming to my head off of property tax, for one of the counties. So, if we increase property taxes, obviously that will go up, but there's a big calculation there that I just have to really dig into, and I didn't want to spend an enormous amount of time on it if you're not interested in looking at it as an option.
And the last time property taxes were increased was at 08?
No, we actually had a very small increase in 2016,
Oh,
2012 or 2016, one of those two. But it was small.
so if we were to look at like the last 20 years, how much it's gone up? Trying to remember what it was.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't put in a lot of increase, but a lot of our,
The values have gone up.
the values have gone up and a lot of our taxing bodies have increased, including fire department, put in a big bond.
Mhm.
And the schools are looking for a bond issue. And although we can say that's not our concern, we all pay these things, so it kind of is a concern what our the impact is.
And the number that you just gave us, the 154 from, I'm assuming El Paso County.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
I
And-
think the Bible for the analysis if you want to.
and does that reflect the increase in property values? I don't,
You know,
because I'm trying to
so
figure out when they were assessed.
that's a big question. The county assessor is the one that does all of that. So we do always assess valuations and everything. They basically send us a piece of paper at the end of the year to help us set the mills and figure out how much we're going to receive and do our financial projections for the next year. But if you do want to look at this as a potential option, I'm happy to dig into all of that and provide a really comprehensive analysis.
Well, I'm personally super hesitant to push any increase, but we need more discussion than just me that I think.
Well, I guess, not that I'm interested in just raising taxes, but it's a ballot question, right?
Absolutely.
So, what are the downsides to asking to be on the ballot?
And that's a fair question, because I think where we're at right now, we're not saying we'll belly up if we don't do this. However, we also need to come up with our list of how this is going to improve everything, right? So I think there's several nuances here. We should look at occupational tax and STRs kind of together. Property tax and sales tax are also two separate questions. And if we would consider any of those, all of those, or what makes sense, but also what sort of revenue we would be looking at. I mean, when we asked,
Right.
when we asked before, we had a specific need and want list. And I think we would want a specific need and want list before we just propose
Exactly,
that.
right.
So what I would suggest is we kind of push back on that just a little bit, talk about what our specific needs and wants are, and how do we get from A to B. That also rolls forward to the April 2022 ballot, which would be, would we approve marijuana licensing? If so, what would the tax look like for me, I think absolutely positively, we should change the election from April to November. Just to save the town some money.
Right.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. to me.
And our attorney is online if you have questions for her, and you know, on the process or the process of changing the election from election cycle from April to November.
And I would like to, in some of the research that you're doing, I'd like to find out actual sales tax, what that 3% equates to. Because right now, that's what our current sales tax is 3%.
That is listed in the revenues budget line item for other sales taxes.
Okay.
I can present that along with all the other stuff. For
Okay,
us to talk about in the next meeting.
so in order to, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, is it possible to tease out sales tax versus sales tax that's generated from businesses versus sales tax from, say, purchase of an automobile?
Yes, so the county collects the auto taxes, but it's possible, yeah. We can report those numbers in full, but we just can't show them for different vendors and stuff.
Right.
like that.
No, that's
Sure,
fine,
no.
that's fine. This was
Just to
years
have an idea
ago.
of how much it equates to in the overall.
Yeah, my understanding from years ago was that it was not significant from,
It's not
And
a
that's
lot of money.
where I'm thinking.
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
it's not a
specific use
significant thing.
tax and sales tax.
Those all feed into different budget line items.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I think in order to have a more comprehensive discussion on that, I would like to see that we approve the concept of these ballot questions, just so we can get some more research.
Yes, should I make, do we need a motion?
So
That's a motion.
That's a motion. Is that a second?
Okay, I'll second.
Or if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, vote with saying aye.
Aye.
Now, are we just voting on the November 2021?
We're just approving the concept of ballot questions, so we can get more research. So all of it together, but we're not approving anything going on the ballot yet.
For both of them,
Yes, for both.
2021 and 2022.
Yes. Very good, thank you. That motion passes. Good question.
And that will definitely push us out to April 2022 for all other things, so we wouldn't be participating.
It's okay, we just need to, we need to see what we're doing.
So there's no way to. There's no way to avoid April.
Well, hold on. Well, there's no way to avoid April. Just because that's our usual election
this year.
cycle.
Or
Yeah,
next
right
year,
now.
rather.
Yeah.
Unless you wanted to put on and moving the cycle from April to. Something like that.
Yeah, and I am interested in that too.
Well, I think that's a valid one, but the only question with putting it on for November is, would it extend the election cycle for those of us who are term limited? And I don't want to get crossways with,
Yeah.
with suddenly saying, guess what, I'm in longer.
I'm never leaving.
Oh, come on, Jane.
Well, and I think it would be a little confusing having only one question on the November ballot. You know, I think we should look at all or none type of a thing to try to do it.
And as much as I'd like to have questions on the ballot, because I think our voting electorate are plenty smart enough to figure it out. I also don't want to put it on there with this idea of surprise, guess what's on the ballot?
Mhm.
Right.
You know, I'd rather, if we're gonna do this, I want it to be really well thought out and long-term discussion. Till people are sick of it and just vote for it because they're sick of hearing about it. Yes, or not. So that's my feeling about it.
So what, we don't get to be corrupt and push it through?
Maybe next time.
It's like,
So we'll be spending this money in April. Regardless, that's what I'm hearing.
yeah,
That
no
we
matter
have
what
to-
we
that
do,
we
we
have to
have to
do
have
this.
an election.
Okay.
So no matter what we do, I'm kind of
Okay.
stuck with that. We needed to start that a couple years ago.
Okay.
And hopefully people will step up and run for office.
Because it's fun. You get a gavel and stuff. All right, so we're moving right along. Oh, the municipal code rewrite. This is my favorite activity. And we're almost right on time with the budget. So where to begin?
Do we have it highlighted, the ones that we've already done? I don't remember which ones we've already done.
We did chapter 11, 18, 4, and 7 at the last meeting.
Oh, so they aren't even on here. Perfect. So that's how we know what we've done. So the more we get done, the smaller it's gonna be each time. Perfect.
Hi, Katie. Are you excited to be working on this tonight?
Hi, I'm so excited. Yeah, there's nowhere I'd rather be than with you guys virtually right now. Sorry, so did we want to talk about marijuana in April? I don't know if I heard Angie mention it, but I'm not sure if that's where we're at.
Not
More information.
Yeah, we want more information, but not tonight.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so moving right in, you will notice in the new memo that I sent out, as mentioned, the chapters we already went through are not on the memo. And then I've just relabeled the sections. I think it was a little confusing or last time as to which section we were talking about. So it references the old section and the new section when we're talking about some of those edits. And I don't know if I already have screen sharing capabilities, but I can go ahead and just run through the first chapter if we just want to dive right in.
You should be able to screen share, Katie.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, just 1 second here. Okay, is that big enough?
A little more zoom in, please.
Okay. Is that good?
Love it.
We love
Yeah. Sorry again that it's a bit messy. It's hard to get all of the there's no real way to just separate the formatting from the substantive changes on the track changes feature. So I think maybe I started going through this one the first time and we sort of jumped around some other chapters. For chapter 1, a lot of this was removing superfluous language. And then there were some edits to definitions. Chapter 1 does include sort of the definitions for different kinds of offenses that are committed in the town. one big change is that we deleted the definition of misdemeanor. And the reason that we did that is the town indicated that they'd be interested in this sort of hybrid criminalization of the code, where the offenses aren't really defined by categories. Well, they're all misdemeanors in the town, but they're not broken down because the town can have discretion in sort of capping fines and removing prison time for some of the minor offenses. And what that does is save the town some time on jury trials. If an offense is punishable by prison time at all, then a jury trial is an option. And that's at the discretion of the defendant in the case. And then what we also did was we increased the penalty schedule. I think the minimum penalty or the maximum fine before was 1,000, and we've moved it up to 2,650. But again, the board can sort of decide if there are, and there's some set offenses that we can recommend that where we set them to a $500 max fine. And those are gonna be your lower level traffic offenses or, you know, just some other minor offenses that are committed. So that's a bit of an overview on some of those changes, but I'll take you now through some of these. So there's just some minor changes here in section 1-2 and 1-3 about the code superseding prior ordinances. That's procedural, and just to clarify which code sections are in effect once new ordinances are passed. Okay. So section 1-4 kind of deals with the grandfathering in when new ordinances are passed in the town. And you can just stop me if you have any questions anywhere. Just some minor edits to the definition section in 1-11. Um, 1-13 is just procedural as well. It just sets out how time is computed throughout the code whenever there's an interpretation as to, you know, 7 days from this day or 14 days from this day. This is just explanatory. So section 1-24, this just reflects that a copy of the code is kept on file with the town. And then this is where we get into the general penalties for violations of the code. And then, as I mentioned before, that max fine has been moved up to $2,650. It was previously $1,000. That is the maximum. So really, with a lot of offenses in the town, it would not rise to that level.
Katie, those are just bringing it up to the state numbers that are sort of up to date, right?
Yep, that's right. These are a couple additional violations regarding town ordinances. Just leave them up for a second. In the case of a sneaky edit of the code. And that's really it for chapter 1. Again, the main thing was moving up to that max fine for penalties for violations of the code. If there's any questions on that, let me know. Otherwise, I will just jump right into chapter 2. Let's see. Okay, and there were quite a few edits to chapter 2. And I think last time there was a question about the old section 2-33 about public hearings on ordinances. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I know that that has gone back and forth over the years, so I'd like to have a nice clean version of this.
Yeah, I'll just
It's now new section 223. Old section 233.
I'll go through these few sections at the beginning first and just go in order, and then we can definitely hit that. So as to 2-11, section 11 of the Colorado Constitution was amended to provide term limits. And that's where you'll see the 2-year term limit for the mayor. And then this was also amended to reflect the town moved from 7 trustees to 5 trustees. And I can't remember in what year, but we had to track this down. It wasn't updated in the code.
So
We went ahead.
18, I think.
18, yes. We went ahead and edited that as well. And you'll just see that here.
But nevertheless, we voted it from 7 to 5. Yeah.
Okay. Um, 2-15 provides for the removal of a trustee by majority vote. 2-16 just fleshes out vacancies and the procedure for filling those.
Now, I have a question about removal of trustees.
Yes.
I was told that we could not remove trustees because they were duly elected.
I can look into the specific statutory provision that enables this. This was one of the chapters that Allie edited and I took over. So I can track down what would enable that, but
I don't know if it's important, but that's what I was always told, is it was not possible because they were elected. So.
I mean, I think there would have to be a hearing and it'd have to be upon good reason. It could not be because you don't like somebody.
Throw them off the island.
Yeah, I can definitely look up the state statute that provides for that, just to have it in our back pocket and make sure we're good on that one.
Might have it in the back pocket.
Yep. Okay. So no real changes here. Okay, so here is 2-23. And that's new 2-23, and it was in the current code, it's 2-33. And the reason that this was edited was that public hearings are not required on, when the ordinance is being adopted and is being read, it is, via public open meeting. But an actual hearing isn't required on the adoption of ordinances. So you'll have public comment, but there won't be a hearing. The board can consider public comment. It can decide after the second reading to hold off on adopting an ordinance for whatever reason, but there doesn't have to be an actual public hearing. And I don't know if that makes sense or if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's fine for me.
So you said 2-23, but on the clean copy, it's listed under 2-21, adoption of ordinances.
Oh, let me just look at that really quick.
Okay.
I don't think anything got bumped, but let me just double check.
On my memo, it shows the old section is 2-33 and the new section is 2-23. At the bottom of page 2 of the memo.
And then here it's under 2-21
Is it really?
for adoption of ordinances.
Oh, right there, it says 2-23.
Yeah, but in what we're looking at here,
Oh,
it's in the
the packet?
packet.
Yeah, our clean-
It says the clean copy says 2-21.
Oh, boy.
So we
Yeah.
probably go back to see.
Sorry, you're right. So with the deletion of a couple sections, it might have gotten moved. So it is 2-21 on the clean copy.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Article 3, I don't think there have been many edits. Just move through it. So the public notice section, it just also notes notices can be found on the town's website as well. It's just a slight modernization.
9 days for public notice. Did it say,
I didn't read it.
did it say 9 days for public notice of a meeting?
The state does not specify the notice required. Notice will be at least be posted no later than 9 days before a public hearing.
But is that just for public hearings or is that for all public meetings?
I think that's just for public hearings.
That's
Okay. Can we shorten that, or is that a state law?
I want to say that's state.
Okay, thank you.
So where's the part that refers to general public notice for meetings? I'm probably gonna look at that.
Different section.
Oh, okay, so it's not in this section at all. Okay.
Katie,
Yes.
Sunday King here, on section 251, where it says if state statute does not specify, if you could
Oh.
change that to statute.
Yeah, that's a typo. Thank you. And for the public hearing notice period, would the town be interested in shortening that? Because just based on the wording of this section, it might not be a state requirement for it to be 9 calendar days.
I think especially for our planning commission and public hearings that we put out, it would definitely be the idea to change that to maybe 40 hours. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your comment.
If we could change it to either 24 or 48 hours, because our planning commission definitely puts out a lot of public hearings.
Okay, on zonings.
Zoning, architectural reviews, but they all have to have public hearings.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into what the shortest period is that we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, I'm not sure where the nine, it's not really a period that I've heard of usually. So I'll look into that and see what the shortest we can do is. So I think I might be off by 2. New section 2-61 and old section 2-83 concerns the town manager and the town clerk. Or town managers 2-61. And town clerk is 2-62 in the new code. And I think there was a requirement for a bond by town officers. And I think that was removed. And it can be set by resolution if the town wants to. Or it is 2-63 for for the bond, and we have left it in for now.
I think a consideration here would be, do we want to set the bond amount in the code, or do we want to set the bond amount annually in the, like with the fee schedule and everything else?
I'd leave it in the fee schedule, so you're not changing ordinances.
Did you hear that one, Katie?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Just writing that down. Okay. I think this was updated. For the town attorney to be hired on an independent contractor status. I don't want to skip over that one. So yeah, as to the comment we had about removing a trustee. So this section was updated based on a state statute in Title 31, Article 4. So any officer can be removed or suspended by majority vote.
Great.
And then here we do have the hearing before the board provision.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure we were right side of that.
Well,
Yeah.
but it says with or without pay. Should that be clarified since the majority of the trustees, well, not the majority, like all, I'm waiting for my raise, but wrong words came out. Since there's no compensation for any appointed officers, should we review that terminology?
Yeah, we definitely can.
Or does this apply to town staff as well? Do we need to clarify that, or is that a separate section?
I think that is separate. And so that's the distinction between employees and officers. So this is for appointed officers only. I don't know if the town has any appointed officers that do receive compensation. And if they don't, and if it's
so we do appoint you guys.
Or appointed officers,
So,
yeah.
okay. Okay.
Public officials, appointed public officials, officers, and then it's-
Okay. So I just went down with the stretch.
Yeah.
Maybe you could clarify it as any officer or town employee appointed by the Board of Trustees,
Yeah.
something like that.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, we can make that edit. I've noted that one. I think the code of ethics was updated a bit as well. Or actually it was moved into the code, I think.
This was the draft that-
Just leave that up there for a second if anybody wants to look at it. Okay, I will keep going. So Article 6 contains a lot of Muni Court provisions. I know a lot of these edits were to sort of remove procedures in here that didn't need to be in the code. I think a section was added to address defendants that are in contempt of court, and to provide for restitution for victims. So that can be restitution resulting from a car accident or a dog bite injury case or any sort of property damage case. That just sets that out in the code so that the town has, or so that the municipal court has the power to reserve that for victims of any kind of code violations. So small edit to the minimal qualifications for the municipal judge. And then in addition of the judge's powers. And here is the contempt of court section. And I think there was an edit to collection of court costs as well, and to a surcharge on the collection of court costs. And here is that restitution section that I mentioned. Oops. Sorry about that. Collections of court costs. And I think that 18% is the max. Okay. Town marshal's duties. And then parking code enforcement, which is new, as everybody knows. So these officers have been added to the code now. And then emergency management, I think most of these provisions were new as well. And most of this complies with the Colorado Disaster Emergency Act. Great, and that's you, Angie. That's a fun new position for you.
Goodness gracious. Want that, man?
I mean, I did study it in fairness, but nope.
I just like that I get to call it Division of Homeland Security.
Right?
Homeland Security.
Okay. I think this is the last biggest change to this chapter.
2-1548.
We're lucky that the county really does this for us.
Right.
And I'm more or less a liaison for them to do these things for us.
And they have a great,
They really,
oh, yeah,
really do.
they
Yeah.
really do.
Okay, I want to say most of the changes to the rest of this chapter are formatting, but I will stop if there is something big we need to go over. Okay. Okay, I think that's it for chapter 2.
Katie, I do have a question. This is Sunday King.
Yes.
Regarding the definition of court clerk, who is assigned to that?
This guy right here.
And where are you looking?
Description.
Oh,
297 refers to the judge being an ex officio clerk of court, but nowhere else does it define who the court clerk is.
Okay. Let me just go up to that. So I do work in municipal court for other towns. I can't say that I am personally familiar with the town's municipal court process. So does the municipal court judge for the town also act as the court clerk?
No. So the
Okay.
town clerk fills that role unless the town manager wants to do it now.
Okay.
I tried.
So sorry, who in the town?
The town clerk and treasurer has filled that role.
Okay. Sorry, Sue, so does that answer your question or,
It does, but it needs to be in here.
okay,
Yes.
okay. Just a definition so we know who we're referring to, yes. Okay.
Katie, clarification on section 203, which we passed a while ago. Right now, I believe the town is requiring residency for quasi judicial board membership, but not for other advisory boards that are non-quasi judicial. And I just wanted to bring that up and make sure that we're doing that properly. And if not, so that we can correct that.
Yeah, I remember that was something that was being discussed for a while, was the definition of residency and how the town was applying it, right? What section did you say that was?
2-03.
Okay. One second.
And then just to layer on more questions regarding that question is, you know, how do we confirm that a person is actually a resident? Is that voter registration, is that their driver's license? Because we do a lot of second home ownership. We just want to get that all out and talk about that and make sure we're doing it to the letter of the law.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, right? Because I know this came up before in terms of, well, what if somebody owns a house in the town, but it's not their principal address, or they might be primarily a resident of another town.
Definitely.
Sorry, my computer is pulling this up really slowly. I'll just open it up again. Okay, so 2-203, yeah. I mean, I think it's also a matter of how the town wants to assess that internally, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be provided for in the code, but if the town wants to house an internal policy about checking residency, what residency means to the town, I'm not sure if you guys would want to set forth any requirements internally. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. In that regard, is there any state law that would govern the way that we need to do that? Basically, I mean, I don't think so, but I'm not sure, so. Not certain.
Similar verification like this, I mean, especially during elections, there's a variety of documents we could use.
Right.
Demonstrate a certain number of time or a time frame of residency. But it's informal from the state perspective. As long as they can demonstrate the residency. I just had an infographic of this of like 10 different things that they can provide. And then we could adopt something like that as a policy of the board. Or we could keep it informal. The steps exists in a similar fashion regardless, especially if they're going for an elected position. I think the concern may be in requiring this more specifically for appointed positions on advisory committees. And then having that be more the specific internal policy.
Right.
That'd be my thought. Just shoot from the about that.
Right, yeah, because the elected officials have to have a year residency.
Right.
And appointed used to be, what it used to say in planning commission, they had to be a bona fide resident, but we argued a lot about what that means.
What does that mean?
And, you know, by the literal translation, it was, if you really truly believe they are a resident. So what does that mean?
Well, can we mandate 6 months and 1 day residency? I mean, over 50% residency in state? Is that
I would probably.
something we could entertain?
Definitely, my recommendation would be more in line with the elected official requirement of 1 year.
So it's the same across the board.
Right, and that, yeah, and that
But
would
we
be
can
good
entertain
too.
any number of ways, or not ways,
Okay.
timeframes, I guess. of
And that
determining
would be for everything or for quasi judicial or? Because I think the advisory boards, we always kind of thought, you know, anyone should be able to be on an advisory. We're okay with that, but quasi judicial holds a different weight.
Right.
You know, Katie, do you know if there's any state law about that? If we need to treat them all the same across the board, or if we can separate the advisory board from the quasi judicial, requiring quasi judicial to have a year in town and the advisory to have 6 months, or they could be people that are not year-round residents. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I want to say I don't think there's any state requirement where you have to apply it across the board to everybody. And you know, like I don't want to say with 100% certainty, but 99%, you don't have to apply that across the board. You know, just with any policy that the town's making, obviously you just want to apply it consistently, right? And make sure that you're using the same proofs of residency or not making exceptions. It's difficult. It's a really difficult question, I think, but I can confirm for you 100% that it isn't a requirement for it to be applied uniformly to everybody. But I think it will just be a matter of having a set town policy.
Is that a policy, or is that going to be a resolution or ordinance to establish that?
I think it would be a policy. You know, other than the residency requirement that's in here right now, unless we want to tweak it. Angie, I don't know if you're saying that we haven't already made that, we haven't already distinguished between quasi-judicial and non-quasi-judicial in the code. And if we need to, we can.
You know, we had done that back when we reviewed we revised all the chapter stuff about advisory boards back when I first started working here in 2019. I just don't think we had an internal policy of we're going to collect these documents from everyone to provide proof of residency. And but we have to do that for elected officials. Of course, that's been done because that's a state requirement, but we didn't have, you know, we just take people at their word when they say this is their primary residence, and then they go before the board for consideration and appointment as or membership on the advisory board or public judicial board. So, but we were saying, we did discuss, and it is in the ordinance that quasi-judicial do need to be year-round residents. This needs to be their primary residence. But, you know, it's kind of like saying bona fide, right? Like, what does primary residence mean? What do you consider your primary residence? It's a very subjective, but self-subjective term. So maybe we need to clarify that a little bit more and figure out how we want to manage that process.
Right. And if we did want to have any defined terms in the code, defining primary residence, we can. But, you know, the more rigid you make it in the code, the less squishy it is in application. And I think there's pros and cons to that. So, I mean, that's all to say it's really at the discretion of the town. And if there's more clarification that's needed in the code, I can definitely make it more clear.
I think it would be a benefit to just make the requirements for membership clear so that there's no questions and arguments over that in the future.
And the other thing we could do too is we could mirror whatever requirement we decide is appropriate. We could mirror that on the application.
Yep.
So that we have the right place and we let them know, this is the document we want you to provide.
Yeah.
To show that.
Like a driver's license with your address on it.
Oh,
Sure.
There's tons.
There's a really
Sure.
good
Yeah.
page.
Sure.
Because if you have to establish a time,
That's the most important aspect of that.
yeah.
Right, because if the driver's license was just valid last month,
Right.
even though you've lived here a year, technically you were only a resident for a month because that's the driver's license unless you have a prior license that's expired from Colorado too.
Yes, or if you
So,
have
yeah,
some other form or document that you could use, utility billing, voter registration, something
Or
that
your-
shows, at least in a, well, you could
in your
use a
state
combination. of
tax
those.
form, we don't
Yeah.
have to see numbers, all we need to see is what state did you file your taxes in?
Absolutely.
That would be.
Because the tax form asks, were you a resident more than, I'm pretty sure it asks, were you a resident more than 6
Yeah.
months?
It does.
To determine the primary
Yep.
state for the taxes.
But we want residents of the town though, right? Not just the state.
Yeah,
Because
Oh,
that does
yeah.
establish Colorado
That
residency.
does
in that case.
establish Colorado residency.
step one.
But as a
If
combination.
you've got
of
somebody
documents.
that's got a house here and a house somewhere else.
True,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's where my thought process is
Yeah.
going with it.
Here,
All right.
I would suggest that the word resident be added to the definitions. At the beginning of the code,
Uh-huh.
with just maybe not some clarity there, but that the length of time would change according to the board or committee that person would be serving on.
That makes sense.
For a definition of,
Mhm.
Can you repeat that last part? I apologize.
The definition of resident would be in the, at the very beginning of the code where there are the definitions listed. Just with the application of a time limit as appropriate for whatever committee or board is being looked at.
Would that work for the purposes of what we're trying to establish, Katie?
Yeah, I think that would work, and I think that would add some clarity too.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. And I know the town's already dealt with it a bit.
Just a little bit.
All right, let's see. I think I have a little more time, so I can try and get through some of chapter 3.
So Katie, this is Sunday King again. I am wondering if I could get you to go up to the toolbar review and uncheck the formatting so that we're not as cluttered. Under all markup. Or I'm sorry, the markup options.
Markup options. Okay. See, I'm not even savvy enough to realize that's an option. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I know one of the major changes with chapter 3 was to one of the sales tax provisions. And then just starting with Article 1. Hold on, let me just look at one thing. I wanted to say we had deleted the section requiring the publication of financial statements. I don't know if you remembered that.
Got it anyway.
That's a state requirement anyway, isn't it? That's Title 29 requirements.
And financial should be included in the audit too.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it was only to certain financial statements.
I think that we just brought that one up to match the statutory requirements.
Okay,
That was what I remember, but it's been a while.
okay. So the one thing that was removed from the sales tax article was the licensing provision.
That wouldn't impact our ability to provide business licenses, though. That's separate, right?
No, and that's separate, and that's why that was deleted. Just trying to find that one. Okay. Okay. I think actually having less markups threw me off. I was like, where are all these edits? Okay, so Article 6, this was moved up from Chapter 4. It was in the franchises section. But really it belongs in this chapter.
And then we took the franchises out. A lot of those are contractual agreements that are not typically an ordinance. And some of them I'm in the process of renewal, so you'll see those come up on the consent agenda at some time in the future.
Right. So this has just been moved up. And then I think the same thing with Article 7. So this was in chapter 4 before as well. So there weren't really any major changes to this chapter, other than moving some of those telephone and utility taxes sections up into this chapter from chapter 4, which, as Angie mentioned, had all of the franchise agreements, like the actual contractual languages of the franchise agreements in the code. And those were just completely removed. Some of them were expired, and some of them the town is in the process of updating. Amendments to purchase agreements. The manager can approve those if they don't exceed 10% of the original agreement price. And then if the town did license marijuana, obviously that's a discussion for another time. We would just have to codify any sales tax, special sales tax for marijuana in this chapter. I think that brings me right about to 9:20. So if there's any questions, let me know. But I've marked down a couple of things. We're removing 2-63 because that's in the fee schedule. As for public hearings, we want to make sure what the minimum time for notice is for those. That was the one where it was set at 9 days. So I'll look into that to see if we can shorten that to 24 hours or 48 hours. And then again, looking back into the resident requirements. And then also Sue's comments about the clerk of court, clarifying that. And I think that's it.
And I think we only have chapter 5, 8, 10 left now, so we're pretty close.
That's great.
Rolling right through.
Yeah, we should be able to get through those next time, I think. I think 10 is a bit of a big one, but so that's general offenses in the town.
So do you want an hour and a half next time, or?
I think it wouldn't hurt to reserve it because I can sort of follow up on a couple of these questions as well.
Okay.
And that might take a bit of time.
You got it.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. I know that's really riveting stuff, but
You know what? It's got to get done.
I like this stuff. Thank you so much.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, good work. Good work. And actually it's just stuff that needs to be done, and glad we're getting there. It's been a long time coming. Next item on the agenda is reports. Catherine, do you have a report?
No, I don't.
Margaret?
Just to add on to the PPACG meeting last week, there are some new fire mitigation funding opportunities that will be available. I have forwarded those contact people to Angie and Matt for us to follow up. It's a committee that's being formed right now. And hopefully we'll be able to really piggyback onto a lot of good opportunity with that. And I just really appreciate being able to be on this committee because we do get a lot of support from them.
Very good. Thank you for serving on that. Sandy, do you have a report? I do not. All right. I don't really have much of a report either, so there's that.
I have one.
Yeah, look at you. Any committee reports? Do we have any committee reports to make?
I can tell you what's happening on planning commission. We're also going through our land use code rewrite. We're looking at conceptual items like LES action. We're also looking at the process type of diagram. Different comments next regular meeting on the 5th. Process the applications as they come.
Oh, that's great. And I know you're working a lot on land use code because I was there too. So not the whole time. But thank you. I appreciate it. Any other committees online?
Jesse's here from Parks, Recs, and Trails, and I thought David was here, but I don't see him on anymore. In fire mitigation.
No.
But we don't have any huge updates besides Parks, Recs, and Trails Advisory Committee has a vacancy, unfortunately. Rebecca, how do you say it? Ochiki resigned recently, and I just wanted to publicly thank her for all her work with Parks, Recs, and Trails. When I first got hired on, she was thrust into the chair role as the vice chair when we had the previous chair not interacting with the committee anymore, and she took it by the horns and got stuff figured out and got us on this current path now. And so just wanted to thank her for her service to the town.
She's been a great volunteer, so that's very good. Jesse, do you have a report?
I do not have a report. I believe that Jay was going to report on on Catamount Trail.
Okay, Jay has left the building.
I don't see Jay in the Zoom either.
Okay.
Did have a little discussion about that, but looking forward to finding out what the latest and greatest is on that. So if there's no committee reports, let's move on to staff. Matt?
I have none.
Angie?
You know, I provided a little bit of a roads update earlier. I just want to tack on to that we were having some trouble getting roadways from our supplier. The PPR today did send us a letter. They've upped our funding from 44,000 to 70 or 73,000 this year. That correspondence will be on the next packet. And so we're able to get some road base from a different supplier in Colorado Springs product, which we couldn't have afforded otherwise. So we're going to really start to see a lot of road work now that we're able to get that road base.
Right. I think that is quite often a lot of the problems people just don't understand. It's not a matter of being lazy or not working. It's supplies that we haven't been able to get, but getting those in place, it's going to make a big difference.
And our guys are working mandatory overtime right now to get it up to par. We do have a third person that we hired recently. He's still on part-time finishing up at his last job. And that'll go on for another two weeks about, and then we'll have 3 full-time employees in public works. So that's a big difference, especially for the winter plowing, because the guys are working split shifts.
Right.
It's a big difference.
That will be a big difference. So good improvements there. Virgil, are you on? Do you have a report?
Yeah, he's on. Virgil, can you hear us? perhaps he stepped away for a second.
Perhaps he stepped away. Well, it's Virgil and I'm sure he'll be happy to jump on as we wind up here. The next item is correspondence. We have discussed quite a bit, some of the correspondence we got, but however, we also received a letter that the Community Development Block Grant has awarded the town $150,000 for phase 1. So Catherine. Yay! And just to remind you, that
This is
is
the ADA lake improvements, right?
exactly, that is to bring us up to snuff with the ADA lake improvements. It's going to help the lake and it's going to help the people who use it. So wonderful job and good news there.
That's great.
It is very good news.
It's phase 1, so we could submit a phase 2 with our next grant.
Oh,
In the next cycle.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
we can brainstorm on that.
Yep, that'll be very good.
Yep.
I
We warned them, we had more coming.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, and we will, and we'll put it to good use. Item 12 is for persons present, but not on the agenda. I would like to remind you that this is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and the time is getting late, so let's move right along. Trajan, you're here, so I'm calling on you.
For the Zoom people, where should I face?
Just go to the lectern here
Okay.
and face us, and that's fine.
Hi, I'm Dr. Trajan Bond, a property owner and resident for 17 years. A couple of minor things about the intersection of Foster and Howard Street. There's a street lamp that goes on and off, and on and off, constituting visual pollution. Will you please have somebody fix it? Any response?
We can definitely take a look at that and evaluate where that fits in the memories.
Usually our street lights, however, as we call utilities,
Yeah.
and they do it or they don't do it. It's nothing that we fix within the town.
Yes, but for you to take the initiative to make the contacts.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
that would make me happy. The other thing about that particular intersection, we have a 1888 plat which says exactly what the town layout is. It is to scale. It can be measured. You can find out how wide a particular street is supposed to be at a particular place. And you can lay out yardsticks and measure it on site. There is an encroachment where a property, I don't have my glasses here, 10635 Foster Avenue has installed some commercial dumpsters on what is the public right of way. That's not the asphalt. That's not the width of the road. There's an actual measurable scale location of where their property ends. So unless you want to vacate part of the public way and give it to them for free, like was done at Hotel and Howard a few years back, please take a look at it. To whom may I present these maps? Thank you. And thanks for a wonderful meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like it to be in a public video. Thank you.
All right, Matt, do we have anyone else that signed up?
Yes. Hold up real quick. I sent it to you a bit late today.
Yeah, I was probably, well, I probably should have looked, but I.
No, this one was on me. I didn't even get into the office until around 6. Wes Simshauser, I hope I'm saying that right.
Is Wes on right now?
I don't believe so.
He was here earlier.
Yeah, I saw
I
him
did see the
earlier.
Sennheiser on there.
I don't think he's on anymore.
Unfortunately, no.
All right.
And then Rocco Blasi.
Rocco, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Thank you. Dear trustees, while many of our residents are seriously considering the benefits of unincorporating, you consider tax hikes. It's astounding how tone deaf and out of touch such discussion is. The town manager's alternative to tax hikes is to cut services. There's a simpler solution. Cut the unprecedented six-figure budget drain that is the town manager's salary and benefits. The town is hemorrhaging our valuable tax dollars to pay for bureaucratic administration at the expense of roads and infrastructure. Why continue down this reckless, unsustainable path? At this summer's mayor forum, I asked you how you plan to sustain these unprecedented increases in administrative personnel expenses. To recap the ballooning administrative costs, the town budgeted $72,000 in 2013, $112,000 2018, $161,000 last year, $210,000 this year, an unheard of hike of $50,000 in 1 year alone. Of the more than 80 people gathered at the mayor's forum, including members of the press, the mayor assured the audience the town budget has never been better. While an appealing soundbite, it appears the mayor's wishful thinking has no basis in reality. Enough on the proposed tax hikes. Let's talk Catamount Trail. The existing route officially opened in June 2001, over 20 years ago. According to yesterday's Courier article, the mayor is quoted as saying, "The Park, Recreation and Trails Committee is going to need to come up with a solution." And yet, unbeknown to the representatives on that committee, you have an executive session scheduled tonight to discuss Catamount Trail. It seems there's a huge disconnect in town hall. I'd like to close by reminding trustees that the $100,000 comprehensive plan finalized 2 years ago identifies hiking and trails among the most beloved aspects of our community. If you're not discussing everything in your legal power to keep the trails open, including pursuing a prescriptive trails easement, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why you're a town trustee in the first place. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rocco. Always a pleasure. Is there anyone else?
Todd Dixon.
Todd Dixon. Thanks, Todd.
Hey, how's it going?
It's another swell day.
Hey,
All right.
Okay, Todd Dixon, 11045. I have more comments on some of the municipal code rewrites. I actually uploaded my file to the videos and concerns. So I can use this time to talk about something else. I'm not sure what's been discussed as options on roads, so I thought I'd share some thoughts I had. Please forgive me if these have already been considered and are already moved points. One option that I'm actually not really fond of is using a different material on the roads. If we're having issues obtaining materials, this option may need consideration. One of the contractors on our house told me that they have had the best luck on driveways with asphalt millings and then rolling. I really don't like the smell of asphalt. If it's something that can be done to help out on the roads, and then maybe should explore using them. The other thing I've noticed is that there are several driveways that need culverts. It's the first thing. Driveways appear to be having continuous washout issues with the roads. Unfortunately, when these houses were built, they were not required to have them. Option may be is if we can get some kind of townwide contract, and it could be a cooperative arrangement, maybe between the town and property owners. I hope we get some of these installed, reduce costs. We could also make it so that these culverts do not have to go through planning commission or external engineering review for each individual case, which is what they would have to do now. We can make them exception waiver and work the engineering details of the contract for a possible timeline solution. And then for having staffing issues, wondering if we could go to our committee to see if any of the members would be willing to take a temporary leave from that committee instead of resigning. Apply to part-time. Once that part-time position is no longer needed, they're allowed to return to the committee if they want. Another option that came to mind was one of the culverts is to have ditches that are partially filled with roughly 12-inch rocks, and then have the ditches get larger and more deeper the closer they get to the stream. We have to have some landscaping done, and they did some of that at our downspouts, and keeps the smaller rocks from just get the blasted away. These are just a couple options. I encourage everyone to investigate all options available if you haven't already. In addition, exploring options maybe a good assignment for a subcommittee. There may be individuals in town with experience in this area that can help out. You have another idea, maybe you could experiment on a known bad area to see what would work best. And then lastly, with short-term rentals, are there other options that have a split definition for short-term rentals? And I'm wondering if we could have a lesser requirement for short-term rentals that are rented less than 1 to 2 months per year, and that way we might be allowed more. That's it.
That's good. You know, Todd, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness you put into your remarks. You always come with solutions and suggestions instead of just how the sky is falling on all of us. So I very much appreciate that.
The last one for public comment was Brandy Morales.
Brandy Morales, if you're on, you have 3 minutes, please.
Good evening and thank you. First, the terrible road conditions on Howard and Hondo were fixed today. So a huge thank you to our Public Works Department. I no longer fear walking down the streets of our town. On a separate note, there have been no substantive increases to the cost of running our town except for the addition of the town manager's salary. It would be fiscally irresponsible to raise taxes on the citizens of our town, a position that has proven to be no real benefit to us. And finally, the Catamount Trail has been there for at least 20 years and should be grandfathered in under eminent domain as a trails easement. I ask you as the board to do what is right for our town and not give in to one person's demands that are only now being brought forward way after the fact. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, anyone else?
That's all I have for sign up.
That is lovely. So at this time, I would like to move that we go into executive session pursuant to CRS 24640224E. This is determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiations regarding the Catamount Trail closure. As everyone should know, there are no decisions or votes that will be taken during this executive session. This is just relative to possible negotiations. I would like to invite our town manager to attend. And Matt, do you want to attend as part of?
Respectfully, no.
All right, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
And that is a motion with an invitation. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And that motion passes.
May we take a brief recess?
Yes, the time is 9:39. We will reconvene in a couple of minutes. All right, so we will reconvene our regular meeting. The time is 10:25. What is discussed in executive session stays in executive session. At this time, I would like to direct staff, as we can do, and to pursue discussion with Todd Dixon about finding if there is any way possible to work with that trail solely on public land and those steps that follow. Couple of things. Things like eminent domain, adverse possession have been floated widely. And those are extremely costly. They are at least the cost, the market value of the land plus a percentage, plus court, which would be detrimental to the town, as well as a rather immoral thing to do to your neighbors. I don't feel comfortable with that. Additionally, we have to address what has been the elephant in the room, and that is the former Trails Committee neglected to do their due diligence and find out the property and where trails were built. And this is true, and it is unfortunate, and this board must correct the failure of this Trails Committee from doing the proper thing, and that is what we are doing. This is at least the 5th instance of a former Trails Committee encroaching or being on private property or on utilities property or on Forest Service property without proper permission. And this board very much wants to be good neighbors and get back on the right track with the trails we have in town and with our neighbors. With that being said, board, do you have anything to add?
I think you've covered it.
All right.
And just a reminder that this is the prior Trails Committee, and part of the reason that that committee was disbanded.
Because we have found that we need now to correct things. This isn't Parks, Recs, and Trail. This is a former committee that is no longer associated with the town. If there is nothing further, oh, I would like to direct, and I will make a motion at this time. I would like to make a motion to direct Parks, Recs, and Trail to look at alternative route. From instead of on Catamount and on private property and on Forest Service property, actually get it on town property. Is there a second to that?
Yes, I'll second that.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And that motion passes. With that, we will adjourn this meeting. The time is 10:29.
Have a good night, everybody. On Zoom.